Welcome to the show, Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain. And I am really, really excited to talk to the wonderful Ella Mae today. Ella, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Ella and I connected through the lovely Chris Ross, I think. And maybe we connected before that. No, we didn't. It was through Chris, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It was.
I'm sure it was through Chris. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those that don't know Ella, she is the founder of the 1 Degree, where she helps entrepreneurs who are scaling by connecting them with vetted vendors. She's also the host of the 1 Degree Show podcast. It's over 400 downloads since its launch, and loves spending time in nature in sunny Phoenix, Arizona, which is such a beautiful place to be. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. And the podcast is over 400,000 downloads.
400,000, exactly. I'm sorry, I said 400K.
No, I was like, hey, 400 is still good, but
400,000, you're absolutely right. K at the end is 1,000. I'm so sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, so 400,000. Wow. And I'm really interested in talking to you because I know we connected some time ago from a brain health perspective. And I'd love for you to share your story. But before we dive into your story, can you tell us what you're really passionate about in life right now?
Honestly, like, look, if I'm being real, like I've developed this really cool community of realtor friends on Clubhouse. And I host these social rooms every night. Clubhouse is a social media platform. If you haven't heard of it. And I host these social rooms every night. And we just jump in there and we like laugh and have I've gotten to know so many cool people. There's collaborations that have happened from that. There's work that have happened from that. But like, I look forward to it. Like when I'm not traveling, I'll do them. And I look forward to it all of the time. It's something, and I've even thought like, oh man, maybe I should create like a decompression mastermind or something along those lines. Cause like, it's been really cool. And the feedback is just incredible. People have been like, your rooms are just amazing. We love laughing. So that's like what I'm loving right now.
Do you know, I love that because Clubhouse is really new, isn't it? And I don't think many people have heard of it, but it's a really great place to connect with other people and socialize and find out more. So that sounds amazing.
It's really fun. Yeah.
So I'd love to dive into your story, but before we start on your story itself, what for you is optimal brain health? What does that mean to you personally?
I mean, I don't really know. Like everything's working. I can think. Like you asked me that before, and I was sort of like, I don't know. Like, I guess it would be not being foggy, like being clear. Yeah.
And I think that's, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's what it is for you personally, is when you know that you're functioning in the right way. And if that's what it is for you, then that's great.
I would say, okay, so in that case, I would say clarity for sure.
Clarity.
When I'm able to get clarity. Yeah.
Great. And I'd love to now to go, because I think clarity is so important and so difficult for some of us who experience brain health struggles. Could you take us back to the start of your journey where you really didn't have the clarity that you knew you needed?
I mean, so I've kind of like barely made it through high school. I also went to 5 different high schools in 4 years. So there was like the element of relocating, but I just wasn't academic, right? Like it was not my strong suit. And when I got to university, I went and worked for a couple of years, then went back to university. When I got to university, I started to notice this trend where I do really well on assignments, really well on essays, really well on presentations, but sitting written down quiet exams, I was always scoring 20% lower than people that I studied with. And can I swear on here?
You can if you want to, but
okay, I won't.
You go real.
No, what?
Could just be yourself.
Okay, so what happened is that like it really fucked with my head because I didn't realize how much of my identity I had attached to being intelligent until that happened, because I felt like I was dumb. Like I was like, why can't I get this? Like, what's wrong with me? So my I was adopted when I was a teenager by extended family. So my adoptive dad was like, hey, look, like he was a dean of one of the universities in Canada, professor, very academic. He was like, look, I've taught a lot of kids and I really think you learn differently. So here's step 1, 2, 3. You can go and get a free IQ test from the university. They give out X amount per year. But first step is you go to the school psychologist, you go here, blah, blah. So I followed the yellow brick road, got the free IQ test, went to go do the free IQ test. And for anyone who's been through a real IQ test, they're insane. It's 8 hours, 4 hours per day, 2 days back to back with 2 different, like, I was 22 when I did this. I'm like, thank God I didn't show up hungover. Like, you guys could have warned me that this was bananas. So do this IQ test. And at the end, they were like, oh my God, you so clearly have ADHD and we don't know how this wasn't caught earlier. And I was like, oh, no way. Because what was interesting is 2 months prior to that, I was, in school dealing with exam stress. And I went to my doctor, my GP, saying, hey, I just really need some sleeping pills. Like the problem is I'm not sleeping and I'm really stressed out because of school. And he actually diagnosed me with bipolar type 2. He was like, well, I think you have bipolar type 2. That really rocked my head because again, like you always just have this identity and you think everybody has anxiety. You think everybody goes through periods where like, you think everybody, like, you just don't really know. So I had this diagnosis of bipolar type 2 and I was on 5 different medications for that, between mood stabilizers and things to sleep and like whatever it was and whatever. I was just like, look, I just want to sleep. So like, give me the thing that it's going to make me sleep. And, so 2 months later, go do this IQ test. And they're like, we don't see bipolar 2, but we definitely see ADHD. So went off of 5 medications, went on to 1. Big difference for sure. And just my scores went up and just the ability to focus, etc. That was a big one. But to be honest, even throughout that, like I've been on, 5 different ADHD medications, gone off of them for a year before just to see if I could. And even through that, there's been a lot of ups and downs. There's been a fair amount of, anxiety and depression and, dealing with childhood shit that we all have and realizing as it comes to the surface what's going on. Also being an entrepreneur, there was really, I feel like I've hit a bit of a sweet spot, at least the level that I'm at right now. But it really is so much strain on your nervous system to adjust to this, because it's why not everybody's an entrepreneur. And thank God not everybody's an entrepreneur, by the way. Like, don't believe TikTok. If the world was full of entrepreneurs, we'd have nothing but half-built bridges, like planes that kind of fly. We're not good at execution, like all the time, and implementation. We're great at ideas. We're great at getting people excited. We're great at et cetera. But there's other people who actually implement and do the work. So yeah, being an entrepreneur, it's a real adjustment for your nervous system, and living with that kind of day to day where you have to create your own structure, create your own income, create your own, et cetera. So yeah, there's been a lot of stuff in there. So happy to discuss any of it you think would benefit the audience.
Yeah, no, I'd love to go back to your childhood, because you said you uncovered a load of stuff from your childhood that you came to the surface. What was it that bubbled to the surface, and when did that happen?
Oh, all of it. Yeah, I was raised in a super happy home. Parents were in love. I had an older brother. And then when I was 6, my dad got diagnosed with cancer, and he couldn't have handled it better. He was very straight up with me and my brother, told us what was going on. I went to chemotherapy with him. I saw radiation from the other side of the glass. Like, he was just really, really good with communicating about it. And doctors gave him 4 months. He lasted 4 years. So he died when I was 10, and he died exactly how he wanted to die. He died at home. He told me and my brother that he was going to pass away about 2 weeks before he did. Back then I was 10 when he told me, hey, I think I'm going to die soon. And I just want you to know that, like, straight face. So you think your parents are superheroes. You're like, what are you talking about? You're not going to die. But now as an adult, I'm like, man, to do that with a straight face to your kids and be like, he was just such a good guy. So he passed away, and my mom went through a massive mental health crisis. She became severely depressed. She was on a million prescription medications. I'm sure it was lots of opioids and Percocets and stuff that she was being prescribed. And this was prior to the opioid crisis, and was severely depressed, wouldn't leave her room for days. I would come home when I was like 12 years old, and she would say, hey, just so you know, I'm going to commit suicide tonight. And I just want to make sure you're good with that and you're good with your godparents. And the first time she did it, I was distraught. The fifth time she did it, I was like, just fucking do it. Like, stop it. You know, if you don't want to be here, don't be here. So there was just
how old were you when that was going on?
12, 13.
Wow.
So there's a ton of instability. And, you know, at 10 years old, I was completely, my brother was 5 years older than me, and he was a really gifted hockey player. So he was at this boarding school that kind of groomed kids for the NHL. And so I was home alone with my mom, who you don't know what you don't know when you're a kid. Like, you just kind of assume whatever's happening is normal, right? So I didn't know she was severely, like, I didn't know this stuff. So I was getting myself to school, and I paid for all my own activities, and I was already an independent kid. Like, I didn't mind this part. Like, this was kind of cool, because I just, you know, I had to really, you know, make my own food, get myself organized, etc. So we had a bunch of money coming in from life inheritances from my dad, and then my grandma passed away a year later, etc. But when the money ran out, when I was about 15, she kind of woke up and was like, oh, damn, like, we're in debt. We got to figure this out. And kind of tried to be a parent again. And I was just like, no fucking way. Listen, like, I've been on my own for 5 years, and I've taken care of myself, and I've like, no.
And lost your dad at the same time, you know.
Yeah.
You had your own grief to deal with.
Well, and that's honestly, that's a question that I hate. I so dislike that question when people say, because I've been to a million therapists, or not a million, but like a dozen therapists and all this stuff. And the one question I'll get asked a lot is, do you think you ever grieved the death of your dad? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, there's no check mark to say that now you've grieved. Like, well done, you know? And so I think it comes and goes. Like, I think about them. Sometimes I sometimes think about how different life would have been. Like, it comes and goes, right? There's no, but
there's no end state to it. You just go into different phases of it, don't you?
I think so, and I don't think it's linear. Like, with the stages of grief, I think they mingle, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can have 5 in one day. It's like 4 seasons in a day. You can go from a high to a low to a mess to totally fine to you know.
1000%. So so when I was 15, she kind of woke up. I was ready to get emancipated, and I had every grounds to. Like, she had not been around, she had, etc. But my aunt and my uncle, who were I hadn't spent a lot of time with them, but they were like, hey kid, like, look, we get it, you're a badass and you're gonna make this work, but why don't you come live with us for a bit? Why don't you finish high school? Why don't you, you know, just like actually give yourself a shot, is what they were saying. And so they took me in, didn't realize how tough, like, they had no idea how bad my mom was mentally. So I lived with them for the rest of, until I moved out there when I was 17, but they pretty much adopted me. Like, they became my family. And my mom's doing way better now. By the way, we actually talked earlier today. Way better now, and she's just she just really realizes that she was really depressed, and she's you know, parents are people, I think, and we can't, you know, sometimes they make really bad mistakes, and it's one of those things where I'm like, if I didn't take this chance when she's healthy to at least see what a relationship could be like, then I wouldn't feel good about that, right? But so like, childhood issues, like, holy crap, like, it's been dealing with, you know, I was always so hyper independent because I had to be. And I think that was innate in my nature as well. but really realizing the effect of the neglect when I was younger, really coming to like my patterns around men with going for older, sometimes unavailable, very stable guys who could provide a lot of stability with money or with whatever, primarily money. It's like that's something that I've really had to come to a head with a couple times, and really just understanding like my own value in a way. Like I remember the first time I had a conversation with my mom where we had kind of a breakthrough, and she said something to me. We're on the phone and she said something to me where she's like, Ella, you're having trouble, but you're not fucked up. And I was like, you don't even know me. Like you haven't known me since I was 10. I'm insanely fucked up. Like you have no idea. And she was like, so she was like, okay, I get it. I screwed up, etc. There's somewhere I was going with this. With like, oh man, there's something with a conversation with my mom. It like just fell out of my head.
Well, you said that you had you've been able to talk with her more recently and have the.
Oh yeah. So anyways, that conversation went really well. That was the first like breakthrough where she really owned up to everything that had happened, which like had never happened. She was always way too delicate to talk about the past.
Wow.
And it was the first time, and she really like helped me out. Like I needed to go see a doctor, and she like did a bunch of research and found me the best doctor because I was just having a bad week. And she really helped me. Like she was really a mom for the first time since like, forever. And there was this feeling of like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm being loved just for existing. I didn't have to do anything for this. I didn't have to earn it. I didn't have to look a certain way. I didn't have to impress somebody. Somebody loved me just for existing. And there was this moment where I was like, holy crap, like this has not been present in my life at all, with the way that, because even with my adoptive family, like they couldn't have been sweeter, but you're always the adopted kid. Like you're never, especially because I was brought in when I was 15. Like it wasn't, it was like okay, cool. Like we'll make this work type thing. I wasn't a baby. So it was just like one of those moments where I was like, and it was that realization where I was, I remember the next day and just being so like blown away of like, whoa, this is what it's like to have a mom. And there's this feeling in me where I was like, okay, I get it. This is way scarier than just shutting people out. Like this, like feeling like you care about somebody, feeling like you're invested. Like this is way scarier than just keeping yourself at arm's length. So fuck, there's been so much shit to work through. I'm sure I'm not even like halfway done. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because that's really powerful that, we often talk about the disconnection, but actually realizing that connection piece, and that just being loved for being you and just for showing up, and like you say, for existing, was really mind-blowing.
So everybody who has parents that just love them, be grateful. Yeah.
Because it's so easy, isn't it, to take that for granted until you don't have it.
Yeah.
And obviously you had it, from the age of to the age of 6 with your dad.
And my mom. Like she was and my mom, like she was a great mom while he was around. She just really crashed when he died.
When your dad passed.
But yeah, that's what I was really lucky for, is I had an amazing first 5 years, or that base.
So you had a good starting base to rebuild on.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. And what was it that allowed you, or maybe gave you the permission to reconnect with your mum? What point were you able to reestablish that connection? I'm sure it doesn't sort of happen instantly.
No, she really, really pushed for a relationship until I was around like 23, 24, and like really aggressively pushed. And I was just like, fuck you. Like, look, you haven't been there. And there, I'm sure there was this like, when you see someone behave that way, it's pretty hard to separate beliefs from behaviors, where you're like, you didn't think we were worth living for. Like, you know, like you decided to peace out. And like my brother was away for a lot of it, but like I had no one. Like I had to totally figure it out, right? So she really pushed, and then she just stopped pushing. And there would be a few times over the years that we would connect here and there. And I'd seen her once or twice when I was back in Vancouver. But yeah, no, I never, like, there was always this sort of nervous system response with her where it was like back up. Like it was a whole body thing where my whole body would want to get away from her. Like I would become extremely uncomfortable in her presence. And I haven't been in her presence in years, but it was that conversation, honestly, like I was having a really bad day. I remember I was like on the couch, probably just, I don't know, on TikTok or like watching TV or something. And she phoned me, which was random. And for whatever reason, I picked up. And she started to talk about how she's like, Ella, I'm just so insanely proud of you. Like, you've built this business. You have such an incredible network. Like, I'm so proud of what you've done. And I just like could not hold it in and started to cry because I was having a not good day. And I was like, yeah, it looks good, but I'm like really struggling. And this and this. And this was actually prior to going back on ADHD medication. And I just lost it on her. Like I was like, look, you're the reason that so much of this stuff is happening. Like you weren't, and she owned it. She owned up. She was like, yeah, she's like, I really screwed up. Like I was not the parent I should have been. And I was really depressed. But I can tell you that like I'm not going to let you be there and suffer and not help you because that's bullshit. Like she owned it and she was fair. And yeah, it was just this conversation that was the right time. And I happened to be in the right horrible mood for me to, like, if I would have had a really good day or been whatever, I would have just like, you know, breezed over the call, maybe took it, maybe not, and just gotten off the phone. But no, it was that conversation that really, and I don't know if we're ever going to be super close. We've talked a few times since, but it was really the fact that she was willing to just own. And I mean, not to like, I could have done things differently too. Like, it's not like, I'm not saying I'm without fault here, but it's like, yeah, that was like a really, and the fact that she just like really helped me. Like she was really a mom when I needed one.
Yeah.
And that hadn't happened in forever. Like she was always too delicate or always too emotional to ever have real conversations. And it makes it so that you can't really have a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. That must have been so hard as well, because obviously at the time, you know, naturally you pushed her away because that was your defense mechanism.
Totally.
Because you needed to find your feet, and her coming into your space and messing up with your head wasn't giving you that stability, especially if she'd been, you know, saying to you multiple times, I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah.
Is that what you feel happened?
I mean, I think she was really sick. Like,
yeah.
I don't know exactly what happened. Like, I just made it.
I mean, for yourself personally, did you feel like the way to deal with it was to just block it out?
I don't know. It wasn't a rational thought. Like,
no, that's okay.
I don't know. Like, I just know that, like, when I was around her, my whole body, and this might happen again. Like, I haven't been around her in years, but my whole body, my whole nervous system would be like, get out of here. Like, what are you doing? So but I don't know. I don't know exactly what shifted in my head or in my body or whatever. Like, yeah.
And at what point in your journey did you start to better understand your childhood? Because obviously when we have adverse childhood experiences, as you've had, of course, it's difficult to understand those experiences because you experienced them as a child and you don't have the knowledge or the wisdom or, you know, the education, awareness. You just live in it. And it isn't often until much later in life that you start to understand what happened to you from an adult's perspective. So you're kind of looking in as an adult, but still experiencing the same emotions that have been locked in you and all of the outflows that relate to the trauma that you've experienced. but in the context of being a child or a teenager. When did you start to realize that that you had, that this was trauma and not the norm?
I mean, like, I think she was taken to I don't know if they still call them mental hospitals, but she was taken to a mental hospital when I was a teenager. And I remember coming home and she was gone for 4 days and I didn't know. And then they took me but she left me alone for an entire summer, my summer of grade 9 or grade 8 or something.
Wow.
Like she just left. My brother was at a hockey camp. She went to somewhere, I don't know, maybe for a work thing, and gave me the keys to the house and a credit card. The whole summer gone. Didn't see her.
Wow.
Like whole summer gone. But I was always like, here's the thing is I was already an independent kid. I was always taken care of. We had money for that time period, right? So I was always dressed well. I, made my way to school when I made it. And it didn't really look like much was wrong from the outside. Like I totally get how people would have had no idea. And also I just didn't know. I didn't know it was weird. So I didn't talk to anybody about it because everyone was like, and everyone's very sympathetic to like, oh, you had a big death in the family, etc. It's like, how's your mom doing? Well, she's okay. She sleeps a lot. Oh yeah. Like that's not abnormal. Right. So I don't know. I think you just get older and you screw up a lot and you realize that, hey, it's pretty nice that when someone has some empathy for you when you've like really screwed up. And then I think like one thing too is probably, I don't know, I hadn't really thought about this earlier, which is interesting, but I just realized like 6 months ago, and I'm like 31 for reference right now. I just realized 6 months ago that like I want kids. And where I was, I was kind of at a head with a relationship I was in, and I was sort of like, man, do I want kids? Like I just hadn't come up. And I was like, man, I want kids. And then you talk to parents and you realize that like they're all trying their best. And even the best parents think they're awful. Or what we would perceive to be the best parents from the outside think they're terrible and they're failing at it. And I don't know, you just kind of realize that like people, I know for the most part, she did the best she could. Like she didn't bring strange men around. She didn't ever put me in danger. She never hit me. She never, looking back, it's like, holy shit, she was really, really depressed and nobody caught it. And with the nuclear family society we live in, it just wasn't normal for people. Like people wouldn't have just come over. Like that wasn't normal,
Yeah.
So it's like she was really isolated. She was really depressed. She was probably being kept in that depression by a lot of the prescriptions that she was being given.
Absolutely, yeah.
And she really just did not have the help that she desperately needed. And to be honest, I really kind of admire her right now because like she was in it for years, and she made it out.
Yeah.
And there's this aspect where I'm like, holy fuck, what a fighter. Like I have, a couple bad days and I'm like, this sucks. Like it's, she lived for something. So yeah.
Amazing. And I'd love to know what, because you obviously you lived in it as a child. What advice would you give to yourself now you're an adult and you want to become a mum? What advice would you give to yourself if you were to go back?
I would have said tell someone. I would have said tell someone. Yeah.
Tell someone.
Like talk, like again, I was such an independent kid that I really enjoyed the freedom. And I didn't know, like she was asleep. Like I didn't know what depression was, So, but I would have said like, hey, this isn't normal. You've got to go tell someone, like go get her help. Yeah.
And she had no help apart from obviously being put on a multitude of meds.
She was seen it, like she's a psychologist, very educated woman. She was seeing a therapist, who I think are a therapist or psychiatrist, but it was someone who was prescribing her the meds. Okay. So whether the therapist was sending her to the doctor or was a psychiatrist, but my only knowledge, like to my extent of my knowledge, just nobody knew how bad it was. Because if anybody did who cared, they would have helped. But nobody knew how bad it was.
And I mean, I think the system becomes often a, prescribe and forget, doesn't it? There's not necessarily, the monitoring as to whether the prescription drug that they've given you is actually improving. Often they'll say, here, take this for 6 months and then come back and see me. And that's not necessary. That's not the solution. And just medication, as a prescription isn't necessarily the solution, especially if, with the trauma and grief that your mum was going through, is the importance of her having a network that she can lean on and talk to, or not, or just have around her to support her, is so important, but so difficult when it's that sort of grief of losing your other half, which is what happened to her. So take me forward to the time when did you notice that obviously you're struggling at school and you went and had your assessment? What age were you then?
24, 23, 24-ish.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, right around there.
And that was with your stepdad. So he came on the scene. When did he appear?
My adoptive dad. So I was adopted when I was 15. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Great. And so 24, you had your assessment. And how did that really shift for you? What was the real shift for you personally?
To be honest, like, it wasn't a huge shift then. Like, the medication worked and my scores went up, and I was still so ingrained in some really negative habits in my life. I was binge drinking with my friends on the weekends. I was it did what it needed to do for it to be something to keep taking, but it really wasn't until like I really shifted my habits and stopped having, I still drink here and there, like when I go to conferences, but stopped having, big amounts of alcohol in my life and stopped hanging out with certain types of people that, and, got into entrepreneurship. That has been by far the most notable shift. And then, but honestly, here's what I would say to anyone is if you're doing all this stuff, like if you're exercising, if you've got a community, if you are whatever, and you're still noticing like, man, it's just really hard for me to get up in the morning, or I legit cannot stay focused on stuff that I know I care about, or I just, I'm whatever it could be, then, oh my God, medication can save lives. Like I went off of the medication for a year. My life slowly started going down. Went back on it within a week. Like I was like, holy crap. Like this really, and I think we talked about this on another call where I was like, I don't, there might be stigma around medication and for sure I wish there were alternatives, but like if it works for you, let it work.
Exactly.
Like, let it work. Like that's what it's there for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I think that's a really important point because, there are other interventions that can be done before medication. Totally. But if you've tried everything else and medication is the one thing that is working for you, then stay with it.
Oh God, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd love to switch now into the fun facts, because I think this is a good switch point. Sure. And to ask you some questions. So fun facts is looking at the 5 pillars of brain health, where F stands for feelings, A is for action, C is for connections, T is for thoughts, and S is for surroundings. And you kind of talked about all of those in the context of, getting back on your feet and boosting your mood and optimizing your brain health. So let's dive into feelings first. What's the funniest or most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?
Oh, funniest or most embarrassing? Okay, well, this is like, and it's kind of funny, but it's like a really interesting one. So I would consider myself like a fairly intelligent person. I think most people would say the same. But there's this whole category of my life that could be labeled like Ella didn't think things through. And this primarily happens around travel for whatever reason. So probably the top 3 most scared I've ever been in there is I got arrested in Singapore and they took my passport. Singapore's not a fun place to go to jail. I never ended up in jail, but that was terrifying. And then I was able to, at one time, I crossed the border with $500,000 in luxury watches in plain sight that weren't mine, across the country border. And they let me through with the watches and without finding me. I did not steal them. They were my bosses at the time and I was bringing them back over from the States. But I didn't even think, I was like legit at customs going from US to Canada. And you get that question where it's like, are you carrying more than $10,000? And I don't know watches, right? So I'm like, no. And then I'm like, oh my God, maybe. Like, I have no idea what these are worth, right? And I go in and the girl's like, hey, what's with the watches? And I'm like, okay, so funny story. So my boss is speaking in the States right now. He's traveling on. I'm coming back to Canada. I just took them because he didn't want to travel with them. And she's like, cool. Do you have anything that says that you didn't steal these and you're not going to resell them? And I'm like, I don't. She was like, all right, well, you're going to get searched. And I was like, okay. Like it was, and I had just done a bunch of traveling in Asia and Australia, like a year or so prior. So I go into the, where to get my luggage that I run the carousel, and this like chest of watches that's the size of 2 shoe boxes that I didn't really think was going to be a problem carrying it on for whatever reason, is in plain sight with a glass top. So you can see everything. And anyone who knows watches is like looking at me and I'm like, oh God. And the like 2 security people that are on the baggage carousel come up to me and they're like, can we see your, like, what with the watches? And I explain, and they're like, can we see your passport? So I give my passport and they're saying like, oh, were you in Asia for work too? Was that for work? And I'm like, no, fuck, that was travel. Like, oh my God. So then, I go to exit the airport and they're like, you need to go. And I'm like, I know. I need to go get searched. Okay. So I go to the place and I like put the watches down and there's 3 men behind the counter and they're just looking at it and they like look at me. And I'm like, all right, so look, here's the deal. And they were like, can you text him? I'm like, I can. He won't respond. Like, he's like in a thing all day. Like, I will. So I waited there because they were like, we might have to fine you $10,000. And I'm like, if you need to find me 10 grand, like, I don't know what can I do at this point? Like, I'm not going to leave the watches. Like, they're apparently worth more. So I waited for like an hour. And then the guy came up to me and he was like, look, I totally believe you. We're not going to fine you, but like, can you please not do this again? I was like, yeah, no problem. I won't do it again. So that was funny. That was funny in the sense that it was a good story, but thank God I didn't get fined.
It's so nerve-wracking though, isn't it, when you go through the airport, because you never really know what's when the sniffer dogs come round and you just never know what's going to get picked up.
Totally.
Even like, I think when I remember being picked up, thinking I had explosives, but it would be film that I had in my bag or something.
Oh,
and absolutely not at all explosive related, but that you'd go through they take you through the extra searches and then you'd have to empty everything. And yeah.
Not
especially
fun.
when you say I'm going to a defense or security and defense conference. And
yeah, that'll do it. Yeah.
Oh dear. What's the most rewarding, this is the second one, actions, what's the most rewarding or fulfilling thing you've ever done?
Oh my God, I've ever done. Rewarding or fulfilling thing I've ever done. Like, I would say honestly, spending a ton of time with my niece and nephews when I'm home. I was there for a good chunk of their life growing up. First of all, I'm so grateful I was around kids before having kids. I would see some of my girlfriends in their 20s that were like, oh yeah, like, they basically get pregnant to trap a guy. And I'm like, you're fucking lunatic. Like, do you have, he's not responsible for this. Like, you are. And like, oh, so I was very grateful I was around kids before having them, because even as an outside observer, I saw how much they rock your life and what a big deal they are. And I think that was why I wasn't sure if I wanted them or not until recently. But really being involved in their life, it's been, I get along with kids really well. Like, I seem to vibe, like my teenage niece is like, she's so cool. And like, I would hang out with her any day, like, and like go do, like, she's awesome. Right. And kind of an old soul. And, yeah, like that's definitely been the funnest. Cause like anytime I go home, not that I don't love everybody else, but like, they're my favorite people to catch up with. I love seeing what they're doing. Like, I love the way their brains work. They're all really technology adept, and just like, yeah, I would say that for sure.
Do you know, I love that, because that's right on to the next one, which is connection. And you talked about connection earlier, which is really, the most important thing is sort of guiding us in life and elevating our mood. And social connections, the number one predictor of happiness. The people that we surround ourselves with, and determine the sort of behaviors we adopt. So we say, if you want to get healthy, surround yourself with the fittest, healthiest person you can tolerate. If you want to be if you want to be, successful and build your network from an entrepreneurial perspective, get connected with entrepreneurs, so that you can learn, learn the ropes and the people that are the next level up. And the fact that family for you is the most important, most fulfilling thing.
I would say that's the most fulfilling thing that I've done, for sure, was establishing relationships with them early and being around as much as possible when I was home. Yeah.
So the next pillar, which is connection, I'd love to dive into connection to others, is who's been your role model in your life?
I mean, I don't know that I have a role model. I've been really, really lucky in the sense that look, we're told, especially as in the like entrepreneurial jargon, we're told all the time, like, build a funnel, etc. Like, it's like, build your network. That's what's really going to make things different, is build your network. And I'm talking really build your network, like build real relationships with people you can call if you have a problem. Don't pitch them. Don't meet them once and put a photo up on social media and say you're besties. Like, create real relationships. And I don't know if I have a specific role model, but I've been really, really lucky along the way, where I've just had a fair amount of people that have seen potential in me and just been willing to take some extra time to foster that. Joe DiMaria is a huge one. Anthony Trucks, oh my God, my very first business coach. And he was so patient, waited with me while I learned how to build a website, and like, incredibly patient man and very successful. Anthony Trucks would be a big one.
Yeah.
And I think
he's such a genuinely nice guy as well, isn't he? He's just so down to earth, just such a nice person.
He's just a sweetheart. And I think, honestly, like, what I love doing, this is like an exercise that I do, I don't know, twice a year, like more if I need it, is I will usually after a meditation, because that's when I'm the most like clear, is I'll just write down who I want to be 2 years from now. So like 2 years from now, what am I doing? What am I like? Who am I hanging out with? What's my day-to-day look like? What's in the bank? What do relationships look like, etc. And like, I kind of like it where like, that's my role model, because I find like it's an achievable jump.
Self.
Yeah. Like, but like that, like I right now am very different than me at 24. Like, me right now would be my 24-year-old's role model. Right. So it's like, you're the same person, but you're kind of not, So, that I like that stuff. John Benson, I worked for John for 2 years before I kicked off on my own. He was a massive, massive influence on me. There's been a lot, but I think relationships are like the most important thing you can have, like, hands down, way more valuable than money.
Yeah. Do you know, I really agree with that. And it's such an important thing that we need to do. And it's so easy for us to use social media just as a spamming tool, rather than actually leverage the power of social media to really build deep connections.
Totally.
And there's so much opportunity within social media to go that next level of depth and really build, you know, lasting, enduring relationships where you're supporting each other and you're building a stronger people foundation around you, so that if you do fall, that there's lots of people to catch you and lift you up and pick you up and push you up and help you to keep going. But it's so easy, isn't it, to, you know, and I'm sure you get spam too, is people just spam you with their sales pitches without ever even asking you what you love doing, and there's just superficial relationships, and building that depth of relationship, like you say, is so important, that depth of connection. I like to call it your growth friends. Is you need to surround yourself with people that will help you grow, so that you're creating the garden that you want to have with the right soil and right nutrients. And the nutrients comes from the people and the knowledge that you put into your mind, and people are so important.
I agree completely.
And do you know what I really also want to pick up on your point there, which I think is beautiful, is that your role model is you 2 years
but 2 years from now.
Yeah.
That's important.
2 years from now. But I think that's really key, because you are looking, you know, you're having that future you to guide you. So I think that's really lovely, because it's so easy, isn't it, for us to focus on someone externally and actually not take the time to acknowledge that we too can be great 2 years from now. So
like, if you've met enough of your heroes, you know it's not a good idea. Like like everybody's human. Everybody has insecurities. Everybody has a different, you know, like multiple sides to them, and it's not just what you see on the external, like, you know. And and I think that it really forces you to identity shift. Like, you see people who are like, well, I'm going to run every day till I lose 20 pounds. And it's like, well, you're not going to do that without becoming a runner. It's just the way it's going to go, right? If you do it. And so if you know that, like, you want to be running $100 billion enterprise 10 years down the road, awesome. You got to develop the identity. Somebody does that. If you know that you kind of want a lifestyle business and you want to be able to surf in the mornings and pick your kids up at night and be able to plug in and out as needed, awesome. Like, you've got to develop the identity of somebody that can create solid systems, and you've got a really good deliverable, and et cetera. So I think it's really, I think it's really important to see, like, I'll say most, because not all, but most of pretty much what anybody else has done is achievable by anyone. Like, most, not all, but most.
Yeah. And you know, I think the beauty of your point about stepping in, you know, your role model is you, is that you really have to take the time cognitively to immerse yourself in who you are and also who you want to be. And then by immersing yourself in that future state, asking yourself, how can I what do I need to do to get there? So it's not just what I want externally in terms of, you know, some of the superficial value or the financial gain, but what gain I want personally. I really love that.
And like this is one of the hardest things ever for me to do, was get clear on what I want.
Yeah.
When people would say, what do you want? I'd be like, I want the company to be doing 10 million. I want, no. What do you want? And I was always like, I don't know. Like, you know, you tell me. Like, I was like, I don't know. Like, I was always just so cloudy on it. And I went through this, what felt like a torturous process of just really, like, I wouldn't stop asking myself the question until I started to get more and more clear. And as I got more and more clear, like, you'll be able, at first it's really, really tough, especially if I haven't done this. But as you get more and more clear, like, I write down what I'm going to be thinking about in the morning in 2 years. Yeah. Like, what are my thoughts going to be? Like, what am I going to be? What's going to be my stress, my most, like, predictable stressors in life at that point? Yeah. It's really,
you really immerse yourself in
your internal state. Yeah, because that's where you live. Like, you live there, like, make the house nice.
Yeah. I really love that. I love that. I'd love to jump onto the next one because I know you just mentioned it. So the fourth pillar is thoughts.
Oh, okay.
And you talked about how you want to think, as your future self. But for the self that you have been, what stupid or crazy thought have you often told yourself in the past that isn't true?
Ooh, I mean, okay, so I don't know if this was a conscious thought, but my actions make it very clear. Just that I wasn't very worthy. Like, I wasn't worth much. Like, and again, I think that our most intense, our most embedded thoughts, we don't experience them as thoughts, they come through as actions.
Yeah.
Like, you'll see somebody acting out their self-beliefs all the time, right? So just putting up with shitty behavior and underpricing and just that I really didn't have, I was acting in a way that reflected that I didn't think I had a lot of value. And there was this massive, I've always been pretty confident, and I could talk well, and I'm great at connecting with people. And so people would think initially that I was 10 times more successful than I was. And I was, all this stuff. But there was these real, and I don't even know if I've gotten to the bottom of them, to be honest. I'm working on it. But these really obvious beliefs where I would just people would be like, what are you doing? Why are you putting up with this? Or why haven't you changed your pricing yet? Or why haven't you? And it's I don't know. I'm afraid it's just not worth it. Or they'll leave, or there's a thing. So I don't know. I'm working on it. What's really helpful actually is doing alter egos. There's this great book. It's The Alter Ego Effect. I think it's by Todd Herman. But Beyonce talks a lot about this, how she's nobody would ever come to a concert to see Beyonce. They come to see Sasha Fierce because Sasha Fierce was her alter ego. And she was the performer. She was the etc. And this can be the 2 years thing is he has you go through an exercise where you write down your alter ego and who they are and all etc. And then your job is just to play the role for the day. You just play the role of your alter ego for the day and you etc. So yeah, I would say just that stuff. Have any thoughts?
No, I know. I think it's so important because we often have, we have up to 90,000 thoughts a day. Many of them we're not consciously aware of. And those subconscious thoughts that we don't actually check in on are our operating system that, like you say, it drives our behaviors. And if we don't check in with them and really understand, okay, what operating system is running today that's sabotaging me, and take the time to check in with them, then we're not really going to truly break those thoughts and change the program.
Totally.
And it's really important we do that. And so the final one, which is the surroundings, which are so important in terms of the context of brain health. What aspect of your surroundings, including how you live and the people that you surround yourself with, or nature itself, brings you the most joy?
Oh my God. I got so lucky when I moved to Phoenix. I have the best place. I got an 1,800 square foot loft with a pool.
Wow.
It's so gorgeous out. It's 32 degrees Celsius, 95-ish Fahrenheit here right now. It's so gorgeous outside. The one thing I'll be sad about when I leave Phoenix, because I don't know if this is my forever place, it will be leaving my place. I love the house. So I love that. And I really adore the relationships that I've cultivated, specifically with this really funny group of realtors. And again, build your own relationships. This has led to some pretty cool collaborations, and we're testing funnels, and there's cool stuff happening that myself and a partner are doing in the real estate world that's very much in beta right now. But honestly, we hang out every night that we're all around, and we'll jump on Clubhouse, and it's random there's gold that's dropped in there sometimes, but it's random conversations, and we laugh and we have fun, and I don't know. I love creating communities like that.
Yeah.
And just having it be a place where people can decompress and like not be so serious.
Do you know, I think that's so important, isn't it, to have those decompression communities? Because we can go around, like, especially as entrepreneurs, it's easy to get really serious about what you're doing and then not have that decompression piece to just chill out.
Yeah.
And just be yourself and just relax about it for a little bit and know that you're still going to be figuring it out, whatever level you get to.
Yeah. Like, just like, and like I can tell you, my most successful friends, like, they never talk about work. Like, they're like, oh, what's up? Like, you know what? Like, we're laughing, we're like, etc. Like, it's not, that's like, not with their friends. They don't, maybe on stages and whatnot, but like, that's like what that's like what we all need, is just those safe places where we can just be ourselves and just laugh. Yeah.
And you know, I think, you know, going back to the struggles that you obviously start with, I love the fact that you have leveraged what some people perceive as struggles to become your real superpower, you know, in terms of creativity. And you started off with not having the clarity, but you've just talked about getting clear on who you are in 2 years' time. And, you know, and being okay with, you know, taking medication, because that gets you to where you want to be and allows you to be you in the best way. I think that's so important. What one piece of advice would you give anyone who is struggling with past trauma, and they also have the layer of ADD, you know, on top of it, where we're struggling with getting the clarity that they need? What piece of advice would you give anyone that's in that place?
Well, you need to, I would say, you need to, like, just make a decision that you're going to do the work. Like, where all of the energy is expended isn't in that, like, oh, I should do it, but I don't want to phase. Like, that's where so much energy drains, right? So if you're like, all right, I'm going to get clear on this. It doesn't mean you need to today, doesn't mean, but just keep asking yourself over and over, like, look, I know that, like, I'm a real person and I have wants. And like, and also, like, heads up, like, there's no prize for the person with the fewest needs in a relationship or whatever, right? Like, it's cool to have standards. It's cool to have needs and have one. There's no prize for the most, like, easygoing person in life. Like, if anything, there's not a prize. There's a negative thing, because you just kind of get whatever's thrown at you. But I would just say, like, you really just have to, like, I actually realized that the biggest thing that was not letting me get clear is I had never learned how to study. Shocker. Because I just had never really learned, like, I barely got through high school. University was crazy. It was the most stressed that I've ever been. So I started YouTubing how to study, how to focus, different techniques to focus, and just try different, like, again, it's like, I think you make the decision that you're like, all right, tomorrow, next month, next year, I don't care, but I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to, like, get clear on what I actually want. And it's going to feel good and it'll feel in alignment. And I know that that's possible. Like, I know people dumber than me have done this. That's what I say when I can't figure something out. I'm like, Ella, people dumber than you have figured this out. Like, come on, you can figure out this website. So yeah, I would just make the decision and then just keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, keep asking the question. Especially if you're meditating, if you're whatever, a lot of the time, once we become aware of something, like where I'm like when I started hanging out with all these real estate people, I was like, man, I wonder if there's a correlation. Like, I wonder if there's something I could do in real estate. I never thought about it. And I just sort of, like, put the thought out there, and you just start to see things and you're like, oh, damn, that would work. Like, we could bring that over, I think. Let me, like, run it by somebody. You'll start to, like, just pick up on things in a different way. So I'd say, yeah, make the decision and just keep asking yourself the question, and you'll realize there's a better question, and ask yourself a better question. I think so much in life we're like sort of trained towards, like, the key to life is to find the right answers. I think the key to almost all of my happiness has been from asking the right questions. And I think questions are really, really powerful.
That's really good. I love that. And I love the fact that, people need to make a decision to do the work.
Yeah, just decide you're going to figure this out.
Yeah, because so often people, when it comes to diagnosis of brain health struggles, is they just get told, oh, you've got this or you've got that, like you had in, being diagnosed with bipolar type 2, and you're just like, well, I need to work through this and figure out why I'm struggling the way I am. And just being given the diagnosis doesn't fix it. It's just a label. So we have to do the work to make our life work. And you can't, a diagnosis doesn't necessarily do that.
And really, like
has to take control.
Yeah, sorry, I totally interrupted you. Go ahead and finish.
No, that's okay. I'm just saying, like, for us, often it's easy for us to give our power away.
Yeah.
By being given a label by somebody, and a label is just a label, like a label on a shirt. It's just a label. But we have to do the work ourselves, and that's so important.
And be willing to dig a little bit with medical professionals. Like, we're so kind of like trained that like the white coat means authority and it means they're right. I think every doctor I've been to has been a nice person. I totally believe they want to do good, but they can only do the best job they can. I was diagnosed with bipolar 2, found out 6 years later that I was celiac. Like that wasn't even brought into account. Like any gut testing, any blood tests, any nutritional, no deficiencies, like nothing was even looked at besides a current situation where I was extremely stressed out and maybe a little bit of past behavior. Right. And I was also 22. Like I wasn't, I was 22 and like not in the best headspace most of the time ever. But it's like, so like be willing to dig. Like I think medical professionals for the most part are doing the best they can with the system they have. They are trying to help. They're good people. They just don't have all the resources they need to be able to really look at the whole thing and what's going on. So do some digging, like, try different things with your diet and food elimination and see what that does. Like you really have to take an active role in your own health and your own mental health. And if you're like, well, that sounds like work, it's like, well, try getting sick. It's a lot of work.
Being sick is a lot harder.
Yeah.
It is a lot harder. And people feel that, they sometimes accept that sickness is their new norm, but it doesn't have to be. But you have to do the work to get well.
Totally.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Ella. Ella, it's been an absolute brilliant talking to you. I love the way this conversation has gone. It's been amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your past story and your journey to be the wonderful person you are today with your amazing business and podcast. How can people get hold of you?
Instagram, you can message me there. I hang out on Clubhouse. Instagram is probably the best way to get in touch with me. That's the easiest.
Which is ella.j.mae. Mae.
Yeah, you got it.
For people that are listening. Ella, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure. Everyone, just remember this show is all about brain health, unchaining your pain. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You have the power to make it better, and we're here to show you how.
By WINJECT Studios, we are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.